come up with something. I'll figure something out that I can maybe say before every episode. But here's the first YouTube video that I'm going to make. What am I going to do on here? Honestly, I'm not completely sure. I'm thinking most of it is going to be sports talk, but also I'll throw in some cards as well. Just combinations of probably some stuff I go over on Instagram. And I'll just go more in depth than what I put on Instagram. Even though I usually do tend to go pretty in depth there as well. Just give you guys another outlet to look at, maybe like more 30 longer videos, along with, like I said, combinations of stuff. Like if I talk about these three guys, but like of course they're months apart, then of course I can give you more detailed analysis in a longer video comparing them all here on YouTube. I'll also probably be trying to getting some people on Zoom calls and talking to them, interviews, just talking in general, stuff like that, just to bring more entertainment for anyone that follows me. I'm hoping, if you're seeing this, it means that it worked out, but I'm hoping that I can get this actually uploaded, because I've tried many times before and it has never worked out. So here's hoping, right? But the first video, and I have my notes like always, because you guys know I can't go anywhere without notes. First video is going to be my way too early, because, just ended the most recent season of the NBA. My way too early predictions for the 2020-2021 NBA season. I keep thinking it's the 2021 season because that's when it's going to be starting, but no, it's actually going to be the 2020 NBA season. So let's start with the draft. I'm not going to go through every pick. I did go through the first 30 picks though, and I'll eventually highlight some players that I think are going to either break out or just be proven to be late lottery picks, or not late lottery, but late first round picks that actually turn out to be pretty good. Stuff like that. I'll go through the lottery. But after that, I don't want to bore you guys just with every single player who picked in the first round. So, to start out, let's actually go through the one and only trade that I have, I'm sure, because there's usually 5 to 6 trades, sometimes more, during the NBA draft, but I'm only going to go through one, and that's because it has a pretty major impact. The Timberwolves are definitely looking to trade their number 1 overall pick, and they actually are able to get rid of it, trading the number 1 overall pick for the number 8 pick from the Knicks, along with a 2022 first rounder, top 5 protected, and Alfred Payton. So of course the Knicks do this trade so that way they can possibly get their star that they've been looking for so long. RJ Barrett, in my opinion, probably is not that guy, a second or third option at best. So they're going to take one of the top picks in this draft at number 1 overall and hope for the best, and then the Timberwolves are able to trade back, get some valuable assets both now and in the future, and they weren't really looking to get a rookie that they can develop in the long run, but rather someone that can help them right now. And so, at number 1 overall, the Knicks are going to take LaMelo Ball. I'm pretty sure we all already know that if the Knicks were to get this pick, that's who they'd take. LaMelo Ball lands in a big market team like his dad wants. Whether that's a good thing for the Knicks or a bad thing, I'm not completely sure. But it is what it is. He's hopefully going to be a star, and he's going to be pretty much one of the only real core pieces, along with RJ Barrett and Mitchell Robinson, for the future, as they do have a lot of guys coming off the books nearing the 2021 NBA offseason. And then at number 2, I really wanted the Warriors to be able to trade this pick, but I'm not completely sure how they're going to pull it off. As far as a star trade goes, I'm guessing you could possibly throw in Andrew Wiggins, but his contract is so big. It's $38, $39 million a year, and for a guy of his caliber, it's just definitely not worth. Actually, no, I think it's $34 million. But either way, $30 million for his production and his work ethic is just really not enough. And I don't think that any team is desperate enough to trade for Wiggins' contract and the number 2 overall pick, especially if they already have a relatively late, early or relatively decent pick right now in this draft, because this draft is not really top heavy. As other drafts have been. It's pretty even throughout the entire draft as far as star potential goes. And so at number 2, the Warriors are going to take James Wiseman, center. He helps them. That's pretty much their only real big issue at the moment, is the center position. Marquise Chris is not terrible, but you can definitely get better than Marquise Chris. And not only does James Wiseman help them now, but he can also be their cornerstone franchise player of the future, because obviously this team is aging. Steph's 32, Clay is 30, and I think Draymond is also 30 as well. And they do have a couple of young pieces, but nobody relatively notable in my personal opinion. And number 3, the Hornets are going to take Anthony Edwards, because while, yes, they do have both Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier at the moment. One of those guys can totally come off the bench, or they can share minutes with this 3-guard rotation. But there's really nobody better, in my personal opinion, that's available. I think Anthony Edwards is going to probably be a star, and I think a lot of people could agree with me on that. And so they're going to be picking him up here, and he's going to hopefully be that star player that they so badly do need. Also in Charlotte as well. At number 4, the Bulls are going to take Denny Avdia. I really would have... they're going to be taking Denny Avdia. I feel like I said that way too fast, and you may not have caught it. So the Bulls take Denny Avdia at 4, but I really wish that they would take Killian Hayes. However, this is not what I want to happen. This is what I think will happen. And so I think that they're going to take Denny Avdia for the simple reason that, kind of similar to the Warriors, that's the only major flaw, the only major hole on this roster. They have Kobe White at starting point guard, Zach LaVine at shooting guard, Shaq Harrison at small forward, and then Lauri Markkanen and Wendell Carter Jr. To finish off the rotation. So Shaq Harrison is not terrible, but he's definitely the weakest link in terms of their starting 5. And adding Denny Avdia there could bring a whole other offensive element to this team. And I think that that's what the Bulls are going to do, as they're not really looking to contend now. They're still very, very young and have a lot of really good pieces for the future. So I think what they're going to try to do is take this core, build together, work together, and slowly just get better over time and build a lot of team chemistry for the future. At number 5, the Cavs are going to take Obi Toppin. Pretty versatile player on both ends of the floor. What award did he win? He was like the best player in collegiate basketball. I don't know all the awards as far as NCAA basketball goes, but he was quote-unquote the best player coming into this draft out of the 2020-2019 graduation class or something like that. But the Cavs are going to take him because, yes, in my personal opinion, I do think that they are going to be rebuilding. Kevin Love is probably going to eventually get traded at some point, and Andre Drummond will probably most likely be gone either this year or next, depending on whether or not he accepts his player option. And, of course, Obi Toppin can either run small ball 5 or he can run the 4, which was his natural position last year. He can run either one of those, depending on what situation you need him in. And considering that they already are pretty loaded in terms of guard potential, Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, and Kevin Porter Jr., they may as well take Obi Toppin and try to start getting some better big man depth, or possibly get a good big man for the future. At number 6, the Hawks are going to be taking Isaac Okoro. This is not even more or less for the potential 3-and-D wing that I think a lot of people are looking at this guy for. This is for the defense, and pretty much the defense only. Trae Young is probably the worst, if not one of just the worst defenders in the NBA, and if you can put Isaac Okoro next to him in the backcourt, it may help balance out some of those incapabilities. And then you also put him with some great three-point shooting players like Trae Young and John Collins. He may be able to actually work on his shot and, like I said before, become a better 3-and-D type prospect and type of player. But I think that they'd most likely just take him for that sort of balancing out Trae's incapabilities on the defensive end, and then just hope that the offensive game comes a little bit later on. At number 7, the Pistons are going to be taking Killian Hayes. Yes, they already have Luke Kennard, and yes, they already do have Derrick Rose. But I think that this team needs a rebuild, and I think what they're going to do is probably just run it back one more year. If Blake Griffin can stay healthy, they may actually be a good team because they have some very good pieces, but they're still probably going to try to be getting ready for the future. And I think Killian Hayes is one of the better NBA-ready point guards, and so if you can take him now and just add another really good player to this team, if everyone does manage to stay healthy with all the pieces that they have, they may actually be contending for a playoff spot next season. At number 8, the Timberwolves will be taking Onyeka Okongwu. It's very similar to the situation with the Hawks. They're taking him for his defensive abilities. D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns are two pretty poor defenders, if I do say so myself. And, of course, Onyeka Okongwu is one of the best defensive prospects, similar to Isaac Okoro, in the NCAA last year, and he also has a lot of offensive upside as well. If he can work with Cat, he may start to develop that offensive game even more, but his defensive impact right now will be perfect for this team, especially because they are trying to win now, I guess is the best way to put it. They're not rebuilding anymore, they're not quite contending, but they're trying to start winning more games, becoming a playoff team, and then just building some team chemistry and getting better over time. At number 9, the Wizards are going to be taking Devon Vasel. Not a lot of guys that they could take here because John Wall comes back. Him and Bradley Beal are a pretty good duo. If John Wall does come back as good as people have said he's going to be coming back, then that's definitely great news for the Wizards organization. They still have Rui Hachimura and Thomas Bryant in terms of the big man positions, along with possibly Davis Bertans coming back. It all depends on if they're able to sign him. But signing Devon Vasel could possibly give you either a backup guard or possibly small forward, as he's kind of run a little bit of it. He'd be a little bit weak defensively on that end, but if you really need him to, he may be able to cover that position, like I said, if he has to. At number 10, the Suns are going to be taking Tyrese Halliburton. Definitely, in my opinion, probably the most NBA-ready prospect on this list. Can pretty much do it all, but unfortunately, due to his size, he's not really the best defender in the league. However, I do think that if once Ricky Rubio leaves, Halliburton can step in and really be very, very impactful for the Suns. But at the moment, he's a great sixth man. Pretty prolific scorer. Honestly, not really expected. I didn't really personally expect that from him when looking at tape and going through some scouting reports and looking at statistics. But he actually seems to be pretty talented on the offensive side of the ball and could be a really good spark off of the bench for this team if that's what they are looking for at the moment, because they do seem to possibly be on the way to becoming a potential playoff team after going, 8-0 in the bubble. So we'll see what happens there. Now, at number 11, the Spurs are going to be taking Cole Anthony. I think that this team knows that they have to rebuild, and they're going to try to run it back one more year, just like the Pistons are going to. And if things don't work out, Cole Anthony could be a really good piece for them. At the moment, he's very similar to Halliburton. I think he's going to be a sixth man, kind of just that spark plug off the bench offensively. And not much more than that. I don't think he's going to be getting starting minutes over DeJounte Murray or Derek White or DeMar DeRozan, who has run some shooting guard but has been mostly sticking with small forward. So I just think that he's just going to be coming off the bench and hopefully being a pretty good impact role player. At number 12, the Kings are going to be taking Patrick Williams. Very athletic big with some pretty good defensive potential as well. A little bit undersized, but not terribly. He can still play his position pretty well. He's very similar to Marvin Bagley, in my personal opinion. Neither one of them can stretch the floor terrifically well. However, both very athletic big men that use their athletic abilities and their size, not height, but their weight, their strength to their advantage. And considering that Marvin Bagley has not been able to stay healthy, Patrick Williams may just be that guy that they use to replace him at some point if he never really seems to be able to stay healthy, much similar to Greg Oden in 2007. At number 13, the Pelicans are going to be taking Aaron, I believe it's Nesmith, Nesmith. So they're going to be taking Aaron Nesmith, and he's just going to be a role player off the bench for now. Very similar to both Josh Hart and JJ Redick, who they have currently on the roster. Just adds a lot of three-point shooting depth to this team, giving Lonzo Ball more targets to pass to if he really needs to. Gives options for Brandon Ingram or Zion Williamson when they have the ball in their hands. If they can't get an open shot, they can pass it out to one of these guys on the perimeter, and they can possibly just knock down the open three. And just helps them create more floor spacing for a guy like Zion or possibly for a guy like Derek Favors. And it's just been very beneficial for this team overall. At number 14, which is the last pick I'm going to go over, is Vernon Carrey to the Boston Celtics. Very good defensive big, and that has been one of their most problematic positions overall. They've just really struggled with Daniel Tice and Enes Kanter at the 5. Not really good enough defense overall to stop guys like, let's say, Joel Embiid, let's say Karl Anthony Towns even, who doesn't use his weight to his advantage, and Anthony Davis, of course. And so it's just really problematic for them because that's really their one big hole, one big flaw that they have. Hopefully Vernon Carey turns out to be a very good defensive prospect. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they take these 3 picks and possibly try to trade up to get someone like Onyeka Okongwu or somehow James Wiseman. But I'm not completely sure if they're going to be able to pull off a trade. I'm not sure who they'd trade for. I'm not sure who they'd trade with. But that is always a possibility as well. So let's move on to free agency. And I'm going to just start with the big names, the largest contracts that are going to be accepting their player options. So Gordon Hayward will be returning to the Celtics on a $31 million player option. That's just a really large amount of money. Who wouldn't take it? And he'd kind of be a fool to pass it up. DeMar DeRozan is going to be accepting his $27 million option. Otto Porter Jr. is going to be accepting his $26 million option. And Andre Drummond is going to be accepting a $25 million option. The reason that DeMar DeRozan and Andre Drummond accept their options is because they are very talented players. However, both of them are kind of becoming their play styles, their skill sets aren't really as useful in the NBA as they used to be. And they know that they're not probably going to be getting paid that same amount of money as they could possibly get with this player option. So they're going to take their 20-something million and at least for this 1 year and then move on to a new team possibly in the future, especially in the case of DeMar DeRozan because I know that he does not like San Antonio. Andre Drummond actually does seem to like Cleveland, so he may actually stick there and just sign a shorter, long-term deal in the future, but we'll see if that actually happens or not. Otto Porter Jr. is just nowhere near worth $26 million, and I'm pretty sure that he's going to be taking that because who wouldn't? If you have that opportunity, you might as well take it. Kind of similar to the case of Gordon Hayward, but Gordon Hayward is actually more worth his money, I guess, than Otto Porter is. Now, as far as who goes where, this is signings. I'll get into trades a little bit later. Bogdan Bogdanović will get re-signed to a 4-year deal by the Sacramento Kings. They've already come out and said that they plan on matching any offer that he gets. In my opinion, that's kind of ridiculous because he is talented, but if some team offers him 4 years, let's say $84 million, I'm not completely sure he's actually worth that much. In my personal opinion, I'd say somewhere around the $15 million range is fine, maybe a little bit higher. But once you get towards that $20 million mark, that's kind of pushing it a little bit in my opinion. And so I really wouldn't want to match any deal after that. However, they have already said that they do plan on matching any deal that they possibly get. Next is Brandon Ingram, which was kind of an interesting case in my personal opinion. I think that he could totally leave this offseason and go to any team that he wants. He is a star. He is a stud. I think he's going to be very good down the line. I'll talk about that some other time. And also, he's going to be expecting a max for sure, right? And the Pelicans haven't really seen how well him and Zion work on the court together because they may not fit the best. Both can be ball dominant at times. Zion is not always quite as ball dominant, but Brandon Ingram needs the ball in his hands a lot, and that could be problematic overall for Zion if they expect him to be their franchise player. But I still think that the New Orleans Pelicans are going to sign him to a max deal just because of how talented he is. Even if he doesn't quite put up 28 points a game and he only goes for 23 because of, let's say, all the touches Zion is getting, that's still 23 points that you definitely want each and every game. So you might as well take those while you still can, I guess, is the best way that I would put it. Fred VanVleet will be signing a 3-year deal with the Pistons, adding another guard to their rotation. Luke Kennard, Derrick Rose, Killian Hayes, and now Fred VanVleet. Like I said, I think this team is trying to start to contend now, run it back. Just try their best to possibly make a playoff push, and if not, then Fred VanVleet is still only, I think, 26, so him and Killian Hayes and Luke Kennard could all still be on the team during a sort of rebuild process, and then trade Fred VanVleet at some point later on if you really need to. Montrezl Harrell is going to be chasing the money, and he's going to be signing a large 4-year deal with the Charlotte Hornets. I think this Hornets team is trying to sort of make a push towards getting out of lottery. They're kind of headed towards the middle of the pack area, which you don't want to be in unless you're, of course, developing young talent. But once they get Anthony Edwards, if he turns out to be very good, him, PJ Washington, Devontae Graham, Terry Rozier, and of course now Montrezl Harrell, that's actually a pretty solid squad. And if you can draft some other players or possibly sign another guy, you may actually end up being a pretty solid team and possibly a future free agency destination. If Anthony Edwards becomes a star and Montrezl Harrell still continues to play as well as he is, then they may actually be able to sign a relatively large free agent. I'm not talking Giannis or, let's say, Anthony Davis, LeBron, or any of those top superstars, but they may be able to sign a guy like, let's say, DeMar DeRozan, someone that's still very impactful, but just not quite as sought after as some of these other superstars in the league. Anthony Davis will be signing a 3-year deal with the Lakers. Now, I think a lot of people are expecting him to sign a max or supermax or just a really long-term deal with the Lakers, and I don't think that's going to happen for a couple reasons. First of all, LeBron is getting older, and of course, once LeBron retires, I think that this Lakers squad just gets much worse because, of course, he is the best player. I'm going to say he is the best player in the league at the moment. And so I'm not sure if Anthony Davis wants to take that risk of possibly being stuck on another team like he was with the Pelicans, where they're just not terrible, but they're not good. So, they're in the middle of the pack. You're not contending for a top pick, so you could possibly get another very good player alongside your already current star, but you're not good enough to possibly be winning a championship. You're just stuck where you are. And also, I think that he's going to be waiting for the salary cap to kind of return back to normal. That way, once this contract is up after 3 years, he can possibly get that max money, that super max money that he really, really wants. However, he has said that he's going to be opting out of his option and re-signing, whether that's with a max, super max, or just a really long-term deal, or a 3-year deal, like I said. It does look like he's going to be staying there for at least 2 years or longer. Goran Dragic, this is a very interesting case, and I'm not sure. I'm very 50-50 on what he's going to be doing. But I said that he will be signing a large 1-year deal. Why do I think that this will happen? Well, I think that he wants to stay in Miami, and I think that Miami really wants him because they're going to be developing their young players like, let's say, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, and Bam Adebayo, but they are still good enough right now to contend for a conference finals spot or even a final spot. Yes, the playoffs this year were a little bit funky, but I still think that they're good enough, they're talented enough to contend for a conference final spot. And Dragic was a big reason for that. So, if they can bring Dragic back, because he's probably going to be expecting somewhere between $15 million and $20 million a year. So let's say what he's looking for is a 3-year deal worth $60 million, right? $20 million a year. What if for 1 year they pay him $30 million, right? Then next year he takes a 2-year deal for $15 million a year each. So it's 30 plus 15 is 45 plus another 15 is 60. So over that 3-year span, he's still getting that $60 million he's expecting, but that means that in the 2021 free agency, he takes $5 less million of cap space up, and that means that they can still go after a big name free agent like Giannis, like Kawhi, like like LeBron, someone big like that, and get another superstar here. So he still makes the amount of money that he wants, and they possibly still have the chance to sign a big name free agent in 2021. Will he do that? I'm not completely sure. I really wouldn't see what the issue would be unless, of course, he's just looking for $20 million each year or something specific like that. I don't really think it would be too problematic, but you never really know. Let's see. Davis Bertans, I do think that he will be signing a 3-year deal with the Wizards, and it's going to be pretty big. He shot unbelievably efficiently from 3 this season, and I think he's going to be getting, of course, a lot of offers, not only from contending teams but also even rebuilding teams as well, as he's, I believe, 25, 26, so he's still relatively young and could be a very, very good piece for them. But I think that this Wizards team is trying to possibly make a playoff push like many teams are currently. I think that he's going to be a pretty fundamental piece for them if they have John Wall, Bradley Beal, Davis Bertans, Devon Vasel, Rudy Hachimura, Thomas Bryant, all these pieces that they can possibly use, and they may be able to clinch a playoff spot or possibly make a final push towards the playoffs, like I just mentioned. Malik Beasley will be signing a 4-year deal with the Timberwolves. He definitely proved that he was much more valuable than the Denver Nuggets thought he was. Very good offensive player, of course. That means that, of course, this Timberwolves team gets a little bit worse on defense, like they have so obviously been the past, how many years, 5 years or so. But they do have Josh Okogie and, of course, now Onyeka Okongwu on the roster, so they may be able to balance out, of course, some of those incapabilities. But Malik Beasley is just very, very talented on the offensive side of the ball, and I think he's a really good piece, especially if they can get him for a pretty cheap contract between $12 and $15 million, I believe, would be fine per year for Malik Beasley, but we'll see what happens there. Christian Wood will be signing a 3-year deal with the Pistons. This team, like I mentioned before, just trying to run it back. He was very good last year, had a pretty much a breakout season, stretched big, and could be very impactful for them on the offensive side of the ball, especially if, let's say, Blake Griffin goes down with an injury. They can move him over to the 4 if they want to put someone else at the 5, or he can still play the 5 and, let's say, put Sekou Demboya at the 4 position, something along those lines. Jeremy Grant will be signing a 3-year deal with the Nuggets. It's probably going to be pretty large, and I think it's a little bit unfortunate for this Nuggets team. They're probably going to have to let go of Torrey Craig, and I believe Mason Plumlee's up for a new deal, so they're probably going to have to let both of those guys go. But Grant is just so super impactful, more on the defensive end than the offensive end, but he's still very good on that side of the ball as well. 3-and-D prospect, very versatile as a defender, can pretty much guard 3 through 5, actually probably 2 through 5, 1 through 5. Very versatile, very good perimeter defender, and shot crazy efficient from 3. your classic 3-and-D prospect, but he's just very, very impactful for them. And considering how bad they are on the defensive side of the ball, he could be very useful and very important for them on that side of the ball. And then two more signings. Sorry. Danilo Gallinari will be signing a 2-year deal with the Clippers. This team really needs to make a push so that way they don't lose Kawhi or PG. And I think Gallo could possibly be that sort of player that they need, especially if they lose Montrezl Harrell and possibly, I believe it's Marcus Morris. If they lose both of those guys, then Gallinari will probably be getting enough money, getting offered enough money from the Clippers organization to possibly bring him in. He's already come out and said that he wants to be on a contending team and doesn't need as much money as he values winning a championship more than money at this very moment in time, because I believe he's almost 30, so he really wants to get one ring on his finger before he retires. And this team is super, super talented, so he may be able to be that piece for them. We'll see if they actually manage to make it happen or not. I'm not completely sure. Next, one very important signing, and I'm going to talk about this guy later on some other time, and it may be on Instagram, maybe here, I'm not completely sure. But the Lakers are going to be signing Alonzo Trier. I love this guy. Very efficient from 3, pretty good scorer as well. I'm not going to go too in-depth on him, but they're going to sign him for relatively small, but not crazy small, because money is important to him. They're going to be signing him to a deal and probably either starting him or having him come off the bench as an offensive spark plug, like I mentioned with Cole Anthony and Halliburton. Then I do want to just say one thing. Kenny Atkinson will probably be signed by the Thunder, as this team is obviously rebuilding, as they let Gallo go, as they let Donovan walk. They're probably going to be rebuilding this team, and I think Kenny Atkinson is the perfect coach for that. Grit and grind, very good at developing young talent. A player's coach, and I think he's just going to be very good for this team in the long run. Well, both now and in the long run, actually. Speaking of the Oklahoma City Thunder, let's get into some trades. So, they're going to be trading Chris Paul to the Knicks for Julius Randle, and then 3 unprotected first-round picks, being 2021, 2023, and 2024. Chris Paul will be going to the Knicks for a culture change. They have they signed Tom Thibodeau to be their coach, and hopefully Chris Paul can help bring some more of a culture change as well. He's may also be able to help LaMelo Ball on the defensive side of the ball, and he's also, both of them are very excellent passers, so he may be able to just put Ball under his wing and just help him to become a better offensive threat, maybe not commit as many turnovers, not try to be as flashy of a player, and create a pretty solid backcourt in New York for the time being. I personally do believe that the Knicks organization needs to sell the team and get rid of pretty much everyone in the front office for an actual culture change. But the chances of that happening are slim to none, so I think that this is going to be their very, very weak attempt at doing so. And of course, Oklahoma City Thunder just gets better in terms of their potential future as an organization with all of these picks, and now a relatively young player in Julius Randle that they can either trade or let walk in the future if they really want to. Also, actually, I forgot this. Also, one other trade that they're going to be making, not them, but one other trade that's going to go down is going to be the New Orleans Pelicans. They're going to be trading Drew Holiday to the Nets for Karis LeVert, Jarrett Allen, a 2022 first-rounder unprotected, a 2025 first-rounder unprotected, and then a 2022 pick swap where the Pelicans are going to get the better pick. Now, the Nets are going to do this because Drew Holiday is literally the perfect player, perfect third star for this team. Great off-ball player, great defensive player, so he balances out some of those issues that Kyrie Irving may have. And, of course, because Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are just so ball-dominant, he is a very good three-point shooter as well. Spaces the floor, gives him off-ball movement, and is just a very talented player. This Nets team is going to be pretty good because they also do have Joe Harris and now Spencer Dinwiddie off the bench. So they're going to be pretty good, and this just adds that third star that they've been looking for. You could have also said Bradley Beal is a possibility, but I don't believe that the Wizards are going to trade Bradley Beal until at least next season because they want to see how well him and Wall can work together once Wall returns from injury. Let's see. A couple more trades that are going to happen. Buddy Hield and Corey Joseph will be in a trade package to the 76ers for Al Horford in the 2021 first and a 2022 second. I think that this trade is terrible for both sides, and I've talked about it before, so I won't go too in-depth. However, I do believe that it will happen. Like I said, this is not what I want to happen. This is what I think will happen, right? The 76ers are going to do this so that way they can get off of Al Horford's contract. and also just get a better floor spacer in Buddy Hield. Corey Joseph is taken more or less just as a salary filler and another incentive for the Kings to do this trade because it doesn't take as big of a hit in their terms of their cap space. They also get a couple of picks so that if they do need to rebuild or retool around De'Aaron Fox, they have 1 or 2 picks that they can possibly use for trades or drafting another player. And so that's why the Kings will make this trade. Al Horford is kind of a stretch big, but he's good enough for them right now and could maybe work with Bagley to become a better three-point shooting big man. And then, of course, like I mentioned before with the picks, if they do need to retool or rebuild, they have these picks to use to their advantage. Plus, Buddy Hield does not want to be here, so of course it gives them helps them get rid of a player that they don't want on the roster anymore. Next, the Bucks need to make some moves in order to keep Giannis. And so what they're going to be doing is trading Drew Bledsoe for Derrick Rose and a 2022 first-rounder unprotected. The Detroit Pistons are going to do this because I believe that they're trying to just be a regular season team at the moment, and that's pretty much perfect because Drew Bledsoe underperforms in the playoffs. They just need... and I also do think that he's kind of more talented than Derrick Rose, but not necessarily. I think the only real difference between them is Drew Bledsoe's defense, but Derrick Rose is still very impactful on the offensive side of the ball, just not so much defensively. So the Pistons are going to be doing this just to get an extra, just to get the extra point guard depth in there and possibly contend for a playoff spot. I think that's pretty much all that they're doing at the moment, and they're just trying to contend for that playoff spot. And Drew Bledsoe is obviously a very good regular season player, just not as much in the postseason. And the Bucks do this for the exact opposite reason. They're a good regular season team, but Drew Bledsoe obviously underperforms in the playoffs. So if they can get a guy like Derrick Rose who may not be doing that, that's great for them. And that's really the only reason that they do this. Both of the guys, like I mentioned, are pretty much even in terms of their value and their offensive output. But I would say that Drew Bledsoe is probably a bit better overall as a point guard. And then the other trade that they're going to be making is Brook Lopez, a 2021 first-rounder unprotected, and then the 2022 first-rounder that they just got from the Pistons for Miles Turner and Jeremy Lamb. I think that this Indiana Pacers team kind of needs to retool a little bit, and they also have the opportunity to rebuild if Victor Oladipo doesn't work out. They can use these picks and Victor Oladipo, along with some picks of their own, to possibly make a better trade for either a star or a superstar or something along those lines. But Brook Lopez can stretch the floor, maybe play power forward if you really need him to, so that means that Domantas Sabonis can finally play the center position, which means that he'll probably be better than he already was this year, and this year he was an all-star. So he may be better on both sides of the ball. And then, of course, the Milwaukee Bucks make this trade because it doesn't really affect their center position too much. Still a very good rim protector in Miles Turner, and also can stretch the floor as well. But it adds a little bit of depth as well with Jeremy Lamb being added to the roster. So now this team is looking like Derrick Rose, most likely Dante DiVincenzo, Chris Middleton, Giannis, Miles Turner, along with Jeremy Lamb most likely coming off the bench. And then I believe Wesley Matthews is also going to be on the roster. So still a pretty good team, but better offensively, may not underperform as much in the playoffs. As far as rankings go, I'm going to be going through each team. Not each team, each conference, and I'll be ranking the 1 seed to the 15th seed. I'm going to go through rankings. So in the East, the Nets are going to get the first seed, followed by the Bucks at 2, Celtics at 3, Heat at 4, 76ers at 5, the Pacers at 6, the Raptors at 7, and the Hawks at 8. I think that the Hawks and the Raptors could possibly be switched. I think that both teams are going to be relatively even in terms of their talent. So it's going to be very close, but I think the Raptors are going to take a little bit more of an edge over this Hawks squad. And then the rest of the teams in order are going to be the Bulls, Wizards, Magic, Hornets, Pistons, Cavs, and Knicks. We kind of figured that the Knicks were going to be near the bottom of all these teams. You know, just a matter of fact. As far as the West goes, couple of not upsets necessarily because it's not games, but a couple of surprise teams and surprise rankings. At number 1, I have the Los Angeles Lakers, followed by the Nuggets at 2, Clippers at 3, Warriors at 4, Jazz at 5, Mavericks at 6, Rockets at 7, and then the Trailblazers at 8. Followed closely by the Suns, Pelicans, Timberwolves, Grizzlies, Thunder, Spurs, and Kings. Overall, I think that this is relatively accurate. I guess we'll see what it's really like during next season, and of course, you know, some of these could be wrong, but I think that that's relatively fair, and I'll get into the playoffs after this, but I want to go over the awards, how I think the awards are going to work out. So, I think MVP of the league is going to be Kevin Durant. And it's a little bit risky because he is coming off of, was it his Achilles or his ACL? He's coming off of a very major injury to his leg, but he has a history of returning, coming back from some pretty major injuries and just balling out. But also, he doesn't rely too much on his athletic ability, and he's never been super prolific on the defensive end of the ball, so it's not like that's going to be taking away too much of his main skill sets, I guess, so to speak. Very talented player. I think the Nets are going to be the number one team this year, which is very important in the MVP race. Comes back, I think he could probably score between 28 and 30 points a game, even with the amount of pieces that they have on this roster. And I just overall think that there's too many narratives, storylines, and statistics that just make the perfect MVP candidate. I think he's going to be closely followed by Luka Doncic, possibly Anthony Davis, and then Giannis at 4, something along those lines. But I think that Kevin Durant will take the cake by a pretty wide margin, except for Luka. I think that's going to probably be between the two of them, but Kevin Durant will ultimately get the edge over Luka Doncic. Rookie of the Year is going to go to Anthony Edwards because the Hornets weren't quite as bad as the Knicks, and I think that he's possibly going to do better than LaMelo Ball will his first year. I'm not completely sure if that's going to happen or not, but we'll see. I think he's going to come in. He's going to be very good as a scorer. He's going to show the swagger that he obviously possesses right now, which is very important in terms of a player's success early on. If they're not scared to be taking shots, if they're very confident in their own abilities, that's a very, very key part to how well they're going to translate into the NBA as a rookie. Not specifically throughout their career, possibly throughout their career, but definitely as a rookie. If they don't have that swagger, then they may underperform a little bit when it comes to playing at an NBA level. Sixth Man of the Year was difficult. We have the same two candidates, Dennis Schroeder and Lou Williams. I'm actually going to give it to Spencer Dinwiddie because, once again, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and the Brooklyn Nets are going to be the number one seed. And I think that Spencer Dinwiddie really proved that he's a very, very, very good player. This season when starting, scored, I think, 20 points a game, which is very good, along with, I believe, 6 assists or something along those lines. And I think as a sixth man, he's going to be still very good as well. With the amount of floor spacing that they have, he can be that third ball handler. And considering that he's not exactly like a superstar, it's not like that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are going to be taking away a ton of shots that he would have actually really been getting realistically in the first place. Defensive Player of the Year is going to be Anthony Davis. I think that he really has something to prove this year because he was very impactful, mainly just because he lost to Giannis last year. And I think he's really going to step it up on that side of the ball and carry the Lakers on that side of the ball next year, because I'm not sure if they're going to be bringing back JaVale McGee and or Dwight Howard. McGee will probably be accepting his player option, but I'm not sure if Dwight Howard is going to be back. So as far as their defense goes with the Lakers organization, I'm not 100% sure if I think that they're going to be excellent, but if they do, which I think is always a possibility, I think Anthony Davis is going to be very key to their defensive ranking, and that's going to help him win Defensive Player of the Year. Most improved player is going to be going to Michael Porter Jr. I think he's going to finally be starting either at the 4 or the 3 with Will Barton possibly coming off the bench. But he's an excellent player. Good on the defensive side of the ball too. Not right now. However, with time, because he really hasn't played that much. Didn't play his rookie season. Got backup minutes this season. I think that he's going to get more work on the defensive side of the ball this offseason. And he's actually not going to be terrible. He's very athletic, very long and lanky, so he's going to be able to actually defend a lot of players if he can just get his defensive IQ up. It's going to be very important for him. And then overall, offensively, because he's going to be getting more chances, I think he could be averaging 18 to 20 points a game, and that's just going to be a major leap that a lot of people take notice to, which ultimately leads to the Denver Nuggets possibly getting the 2 seed. And that's going to help him. That's going to be key in him getting the most improved player. Coach of the Year, pretty simple. Steve Nash. The narrative is there. Comes in his first season, leads this team to the number 1 seed in the East with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving by his side. I don't think I have to go too much in depth too much there. And I think that Coach of the Year is going to be going to Steve Nash. Overall, I want to go through some storylines, some stuff that we're going to realize, some things that people are going to be talking about throughout the season. That people just notice overall. And I'm going to make this quick. I won't go too in-depth, I don't think. One of the things that people are going to talk about is that the 76ers really need to make better moves for an actual point guard, because they're probably going to be starting Shake Milton with Josh Richardson, Tobias Harris, and then have Ben Simmons on the 4 with Joel Embiid at the 3, or possibly Buddy Hield at the 2 and Josh Richardson at the 1. I'm not completely sure how Josh Richardson is going to work out in that position, or Buddy Hield if he somehow does run point guard. And so I think that the talk is going to be made, do they really need, or Josh Richardson and Buddy Hield really the point guards that this team could use? Or is there someone else better out there that could finally take this team to the levels that we expect of them with the amount of talent that they have on the roster? The Hawks and the much improved Bulls, because yes, the Bulls are going to be a lot better under Billy Donovan, along with just the amount of talent that they have, are going to be in a major race for the 8th seed. I think that the 7, 8, and 9 seed in the East are going to be very close, only separated by a couple of games. All 3 of those teams, 2 of those teams, Hawks and the Bulls, are going to be very young and very up-and-coming and very talented. The Raptors, they're used to it, though. They're used to performing in the playoffs. They're used to performing towards the end of the regular season. They're used to having the pressure. They're used to having their backs against the wall, so to say. And I think that's what's ultimately going to give them the edge. But it's definitely going to be a storyline looking at next season that the Hawks and the Bulls are going to be competing for that final 8th-seeded spot in the playoffs. The Pacers may need a star, because Oladipo probably won't be it, in my personal opinion. I think that he's going to be a second option or a third option on this team, not the superstar that he once was before his injury. And I think that spat talk is going to definitely arise. Hey, they need someone else here in Indiana. Trade Victor Oladipo, take some picks, and possibly get someone better, because you don't want to let the guy walk in free agency for nothing, but you don't want to be signing him to a near max deal if he's not performing as well as you expect. And then the Raptors may need a rebuild. It depends on who they decide to bring back, but I'm going to guess that Fred VanVleet is going to be just going to let him walk. OG Anunoby will most likely return, but then you have Kyle Lowry, who's definitely getting up there in age, 35, I believe. He's been very important for this team in terms of especially their playoff run this year and last year. And then Pascal Siakam, I think he's best as a second option. Much like CJ McCollum, when he doesn't have as much attention on him, his full abilities are definitely unlocked. Marcus Gasol is most likely going to be let go, and Serge Ibaka maybe as well. So they do have some young talent with Terrence Davis and Norman Powell still, but they definitely need some better depth at the big man position. And of course, Kyle Lowry is probably going to have to get traded, but he's on a relatively large multi-year deal right now, and they may have to finally start to take those steps towards rebuilding. As far as the draft goes, because there's going to be a couple of draft, there's going to be a couple of storylines around the draft. And one of those is Tyrese Maxey, who was taken by the Orlando Magic at 15th, is a stud and a cornerstone for possibly a rebuild or a retooling from this Orlando Magic team. Possibly get rid of, let's say, Markelle Fultz, keep Evan Fournier on the roster, or maybe just let him go or trade him. Nikola Vucevic is still pretty valuable, but he's getting up there in age, maybe trade him. But Tyrese Maxey is going to be a star, excellent ball handler, pretty good scorer, a little bit inefficient, and also just didn't play the right role at Kentucky, so I think he had a down year, and that's why he's going to slip so far down into the draft. But he's going to be overall just a stud for this Orlando Magic team, and will be perfect for them to build around. Jaden McDaniels really helps stretch the floor for this Miami Heat team and gives them even more depth and young talent than they had last year, which could possibly help them make another conference finals or finals push this season. And even if they don't, they have the young pieces that can develop next season and possibly make them a top 3 seed in the East, a top 2 seed in the East if they're lucky, and compete for an NBA title. Sadiq Bey and Tyrell Terry, Tyrell Terry are fantastic catch-and-shoot 3 options that are both NBA-ready prospects. Bey is on the Nets, which adds even more talent to the Nets squad, and then Terry is on this Mavericks squad. And both of those guys actually fit their systems perfectly, both with very ball-dominant players, Luka Doncic for the Mavs, and then both Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant on the Nets, helping space the floor just unbelievably well. And, of course, just leads to a whole, not really debate, but they're going to be compared to, let's say, Duncan Robinson or Davis Bertans, I believe that's how you say it, from this year. Both of those guys kind of broke out this season, and I think that both of these rookies are going to be seen as very prolific three-point shooters, and they're going to get a lot more attention than we had originally expected going into the draft. Devon Vasel is going to look like a bust. His shooting form is absolutely terrible. A video just came out recently. Doesn't really seem to have that attacking mindset that I think some people have. He's kind of scrawny for a 3-and-D prospect. I'm not sure how much more weight he can put on. But also, one of the other issues that I have with Devon Vasel overall is people said he was a 3-and-D type prospect. And yes, he was very efficient from 3, but I believe he only took 2.5 or 3 3-point shots a game, which is crazy, crazy low. And that probably means that he's not as confident in his shot, and especially with a terrible shooting form like what we're seeing now, this man is going to be a bust, and I'm pretty much guaranteeing that. Which kind of course, leads to the fact, do the Wizards need a rebuild? Yes, they do. It's pretty obvious, and they're going to have to start trading some pieces, maybe build around Rui Hachimura or something, but they're going to have to start their rebuild there in Washington. Isaiah Stewart is a defensive monster under Nick Nurse. I have him being taken... When do I have him being taken? He's taken 29th by the Raptors, and he's going to be a defensive stud for them. He's probably going to be starting at center position, depending on if they bring Serge Ibaka back. Especially if they actually bring Serge back, because he's definitely a pretty good defender and has been throughout his career. But under Nick Nurse's defensive coaching abilities, Isaiah Stewart is going to be a defensive monster. Your poor man's Rudy Gobert, so to say. Let's see, the Nuggets. The Nuggets are legitimate contenders both now and for a long time. Jamal Murray, Nicole Yokic, Bol, who I absolutely love, you guys already know that, and Michael Porter Jr. Are just very, very good. I think Bol's going to be getting backup minutes. No way he's getting starting minutes next season. But they have so much young talent that is so good already. Once they start to get used to playoff games and they get some playoff experience, they could be extremely, extremely dangerous in the future. The Jazz are a sneaky good team. Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Joe Ingles, I guess, along with Bojan Bogdanovic, Rudy Gobert, Jordan Clarkson off of the bench. A very excellent team that could possibly be making a better playoff push, of course, not counting for possible injuries. Hoping that Mike Conley stays in that playoff form that we saw from him, because last regular season was pretty bad for him. But in the playoffs, he stepped it up a bit. He and Donovan Mitchell finally seem to have some more chemistry there. So hopefully that can continue going into next season. And they could be a sneaky good team as far as the playoffs go, taking some teams to 7 or 6 games that we wouldn't have originally expected. Suns, Timberwolves, Pelicans, and Grizzlies will definitely be competing for the bottom seeds in the playoffs next season. But I think that their lack of playoff experience and their lack of team chemistry as a whole is just going to really affect them. And they won't be playoff teams next season, or this season, but next season they definitely all could be, or most of them could be. Michael Porter Jr. could be the best or second best player on the Nuggets in the long run, because this kid is an absolutely fantastic scorer. I think Jamal Murray's offensive game was taken a little bit out of context in the bubble. I think that the bubble's depth perception, which a lot of players talked about, really helped Murray score a lot, averaging only 18 points a game for the past 2 seasons. Then he goes to the bubble and averages close to 30 or something ridiculous like that. I just don't think that that's who he really is. I think maybe a 20-plus point scorer is a possibility, but I don't really see him still averaging close to 30. Nicole Yokic will probably be the best player on this team in the long run, because he's just so good offensively with his passing ability, your ability to run the offense through him. His mobility as a big man, while he's not fast, he does make really good decisions on the fly, and still a pretty good scorer as well. But Michael Porter Jr. will be very good, scoring from all 3 levels, electric player, athletic, long, tall, next Kevin Durant, I guess, as many players have said, just not as skinny. I think he's going to be just an excellent scorer, could possibly average 25 points per game or more later down the line. Maybe in his prime he averages closer to 30. And then, Alonzo Trier shouldn't have been cut. Like I said, I'm not going to go into in-depth because I do want to talk about this guy later. But he's going to be an excellent 3-point shooter. He's probably going to be either very good as a 6th man, or he's that third option that the Lakers so badly need as a scorer. I think he could average between 15 and 17 points a game. Maybe not. I'm going to say 15 points a game, most likely 17 if he's lucky. And a lot of people are going to wonder why the Knicks actually cut him. Because he's just very, very talented. Not the final thing, but one of almost at the end here. I'm going to go through the playoffs. I'll try to get through this pretty quickly, though. In the first round, number 1 seeded Nets versus the number 8 seeded Hawks. Nets beat them 4-1. Pretty simple. Bucks sweep the Raptors as a 2 seed. The Celtics will sweep the Pacers as a 3 seed. And the 76ers, as the 5th seed, are going to beat the Heat in 7 games. I think it's going to be a very close series, but I think overall, what eventually leads to the 76ers team winning is just talent. The Heat are definitely extremely deep, but I think that if everyone stays healthy on this 76ers roster, they may have finally worked something out with enough floor spacing and just very, very good defense and offense as well. They may be able to finally make it past, the first round or two. And now in the West, Lakers are going to do a gentleman's sweep with the Blazers, beating them in 5. Same thing with the Nuggets and the Rockets. The Nuggets are going to beat the Rockets in 5. The Clippers and Mavericks are going to be meeting up once again. And once again, the Clippers are going to win in 6. I wouldn't be surprised if this went to 7. But I'm not completely sure if I'm confident that Luka is good enough to lead him over an even more talented Clippers team. I'm not sure if they're actually more talented, but I'm going to stick with that for now. Plus, I expect Kristaps Porzingis to be injury prone, whether it's the regular season or the playoffs. I don't think he's going to be getting as many games as we hope, and that's going to affect team chemistry a little bit, especially if that happens during the playoffs, then they're definitely screwed. And then the Warriors are going to be beating the Jazz in 5. I wouldn't be surprised if it's 6, though. Both teams are pretty well-rounded, and I think that the Jazz are better defensively. But the offensive output of this Warriors team with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry is just going to be too much for this Jazz team to handle, especially with the limited amount of defense that they have in their backcourt. In the second round, the Nets are going to beat the 76ers in 6 games, and then the Bucks are going to beat the Celtics in 5. The Lakers are going to beat the Warriors in 6, and then the Nuggets are going to beat the Clippers in 7. Rematch of the playoffs from this season, but now with MPJ getting even better, I just don't think that the Clippers are going to stand a chance. Well, not stand a chance. They take them to 7. But I think that Kawhi is probably going to be leaving soon, and this Clippers organization just falls apart as a whole. And the Nuggets are going to be moving on to the next round. Now, the number 1 seeded Nets versus the Milwaukee Bucks. Both of these series, actually, both of the conference finals are going to be going to 7. I have the Nets beating the Bucks in 7, which means Giannis may be out of Milwaukee next season. And then the Lakers versus the Nuggets. I have the Nuggets winning in 7. I think that this team is super well-rounded, and if Michael Porter Jr. really steps it up, and they have that many scoring options, and if he does actually get better defensively, I don't see how the Nuggets could lose this series. I think it's going to be close for sure, but they are just crazy, crazy talented. And I think that they're going to be able to beat the Lakers in 7. Now as the finals matchup goes, number 1 seeded Nets versus the number 2 seeded Nuggets. The Nets are going to beat them in 6. Both teams are extremely deep and star-studded, but tell me that a lineup of Kyrie Irving, and also, one of the key factors in this is going to be playoff experience. You have Kyrie Irving next to Drew Holiday with Joe Harris, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Jordan. Excellent floor spacing, great star power in that starting 5. And then you also have Nick Claxton, I think TLC coming off the bench as well, along with Spencer Dinwiddie. That's just too much for this Nuggets team to handle because they are pretty deep. Not pretty deep. They're relatively deep as far as the Nuggets go, but their biggest positive lies in their starting 5's amount of star power. Storylines for after the NBA season is over. Giannis is going to be gone by next season, and a lot of people are expecting it. The Warriors dynasty is going to be over, but Wiseman is definitely a good piece for them in the future. Pretty athletic big man. Will he be a superstar and the number 1 option for them? Most likely not, but he's still going to be pretty impactful, possible number 2 option, and still pretty good on both ends of the floor, and still has the ability to stretch the floor, especially after working with this Warriors organization. If Bol can start, the Nuggets could win the championship next season and are definitely, of course, good down the line. They'll have the ability to possibly add some future players either in the draft or possibly in free agency if they have enough cap space. And so they could be both very good now and down the line and could be winning the championship next season, especially if players do tend to take a step forward as they are still so young. The Celtics need a better big man. Vernon Carrey is going to be solid, but as a rookie, I don't think he's going to be excellent on the defensive side of the ball. He'll be pretty good, but he's still not going to be that defensive monster that they really need. And so I think it's just going to be, once again, kind of a disappointing season for this Boston Celtics team. The Nets are legit. People have been wondering, will Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant work out together? I think that they will, especially with Steve Nash there. I think he's going to be able to kind of tone down both of their personalities and make things work overall. We'll see if that happens. or not if I'm wrong, but I think that's what's going to happen. This team is going to be good for the 3 years now that they're on this that they are both on this Nets roster. The Blazers and the Rockets need to rebuild, and they're going to be taking steps toward that already. The Rockets already have not firing, but Daryl Morey stepping down and letting go of Mike D'Antoni. I don't think that the Blazers are ready to do it, but I think that this season it's just going to be obvious that they really don't have a much higher ceiling than what they are at right now. They're going to stick with Gary Trent Jr. and I guess Anthony Simons and just hope for the best down the line. Actually, who did they draft? Because I think that they drafted... Who did I have? Oh, I had them drafting Jalen Smith here, and I think that he could possibly be a relatively good impact piece for them as well in the future. So they're going to take these 3 guys, maybe Nas Little as well, and just rebuild around them, retool, just let them grow, get better, and then go from there. The Clippers will be the next Nets. They give up a lot of assets for some stars. Things don't work out, and then they're stuck in a black hole for the next 5 or 10 years, which is very unfortunate for this team because they wanted to possibly be contending with the Lakers as the team of LA, but I don't think that's going to happen. Which is pretty unfortunate because I like the Clippers organization. I like Steve Ballmer, not as much as an owner, but as a person in general. And then the final thing is the Mavs could be the best team, the next Warriors dynasty, if they can get a 3rd star. Victor Oladipo, Bradley Beal, and Giannis are the top 3 names. Luka Doncic is going to be second in MVP votes most likely next season. Porzingis unfortunately can't stay healthy, so they need a better option. If they can get Giannis in either a trade or sign him, they're unstoppable. Bradley Beal would be very good as well because of both his offensive and defensive abilities. He could possibly cancel out some of those issues that Luka has. But Victor Oladipo might be the best because he'll still be very impactful in the defensive end. So, like I said, helps with Luka's capabilities. He may be able to sign for less money, so it won't take as much of a hit there. So they can still bring guys back like Seth Curry and Tim Hardaway and guys like that. And this team is just going to be very, very good, both now and in the future, if they can finally, get past the 6th seed, the 5th seed, something along those lines. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you don't like the lighting, if you don't like the setup, let me know. Leave a comment or DM me on Instagram if you came here from my Instagram. Like I said, I have some plans overall, but this is kind of just me more or less testing things out. I'm hoping I can get this video out. I'm praying I did because I tried to get it out earlier, like yesterday, but my phone died in the middle of recording. So this is kind of a lot longer than I thought it would be. I was expecting it to only be like a 30-minute talk, but it was longer. Like I said, I got some stuff planned, hopefully some calls with some guys, interviews, overall talk. Let me know what you guys want to see. You can either comment or follow me on Instagram at Conrads_sportscards, and send me a DM there. Let me know what you thought. I'd appreciate any feedback, and thanks for watching.